Welcome, everybody, to Illuminate, Navigate, Radiate, a journey of emotional resilience. I'm your host, Brandon, coming at you on another Wednesday with a great topic discussion. This one's going to be a lot of fun because I have a special guest with me today from a recent journey segment. We got Chris Elliott back, so I'm really excited that you were willing to join in and have the discussion today. So, welcome again, Chris, and how you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I'm good. I'm blessed. I was going to say never stressed, but that's not true.
Yeah.
I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Not feeling so stressed today. It's a good Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that shows it's easy to say that stuff, but doesn't always we don't always actually feel that way.
Yeah. And I made a choice a long time ago to be very mindful of the language that I use and to make sure that I'm being as honest as possible in the language that I use. So that's why I had to stutter because I was like,
Yeah.
blessed. Yep. Okay, that's true.
Yeah.
Blessed. I'm not stressed today. It's a good day.
And I think that's really important though, like you just said, to be conscious of the language we're using, right? And how we're using
Oh,
it and
yeah.
the way we're using it, and because then it translates to realness and directness and not so much like let's tiptoe around the way we're feeling or the way you're feeling, and just be honest in those moments about those things.
I mean 100%. When I was getting sober, one of the books I read in the beginning of that journey was The Four Agreements, and I think that's one of them. I think the author, what's his name? Ruiz, something Ruiz. He says, be impeccable with your word, something to that effect. So really what we're saying, being mindful with the language that you're using all the time because it informs so much without us even really being aware of it. It's telling us the truth of how we feel. It's creating the world around us. This might sound a little fantastical, but words are a little bit like magic spells, like I told my fiance this the other day because sometimes when she gets a little exasperated and overwhelmed, she'll be like, I'm tired of this and I'm tired of that. And I was like, babe, as much as I love you, be mindful of the language that you're using because you tell me all the time that you do feel drained. And so if you're constantly telling the world that you're tired of this and you're tired of that, no wonder you're tired because you're telling yourself and the world that you're tired. So, might sound silly and dumb in that instance, but it is true. You do create your reality, even down to the words that you choose to use. And you can exchange energy that way and feelings and truth. And so, yeah, all that to say, just watch what you say,
Yeah.
but say your truth. Say your truth, wrap it in love, but just be mindful.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great example of it, and just shows we even talked about this a little bit beforehand of just when you're focused on that or you're saying those things, it kind of plays in the forefront of your mind. So that's what you're seeing, you're perceiving, your thought process is
Mm-hmm.
affected by that. And if I'm constantly saying, I don't feel good about this, then I'm not going to feel good about things I'm going to do. And
You just not gonna
it
feel good,
plays that way.
period, right?
Yep.
And it also because it forces you to slow down and really think before you speak, to process what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing before you even put anything out in the world or put that on someone else. And we don't do that, especially here where we, live and where we've grown up. We just go, go, go and spill, spill, spill and vent, vent, vent and feel, feel, feel and act, act, act. So I think if we all took a second to process before we expressed, there'd be a lot more transmutation of our suffering into healing and empathy than anything else. And confidence.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Confidence. But that's a great way of just thinking about it. It's just taking that time to process and think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it can play a part in that confidence, which is our discussion today, is building confidence and self-esteem. And this is why I'm excited, John, because I feel like you bring such a good perspective, and you talk really well about these things. And I really enjoy hearing what you have to say about it. So again, I'm grateful that you joined today for this discussion. But just kind of starting that off, right? Confidence, self-esteem. How do you see those two things, either in your life or how you feel about
Oh man. Well, my relationship I'd say has changed, over the course of my lived experience. I think that for most of my formative years and young adult years, that was a very evasive thing. We talked a little bit earlier about the self-esteem aspect of confidence, and then the faith or belief that you can get shit done component of confidence, right? Your capabilities. And I don't think I had either really for a long time, because I wasn't in an environment coming up that cultivated that in a child. It was, and if anything, it drove anxiety and perfectionism and imposter syndrome all the more. But then, as you know, you get older and you realize, like, oh, that's not what it. That's confidence doesn't have to be those things. Now, after being sober and really doing a lot of self reflection and being in therapy for a long time and doing just a lot of work. Um, to me, it's just faith in my goodness, because people today will say, like, oh, you're so confident, you seem like you just got it so together, you always know what to say. And I'm like, I am a duck treading water, like the little feet underneath, like this. On the inside, I'm schwitzing, my palms are sweating. Like, there's rarely a moment where I'm not anxious. There's rarely a moment where I'm not battling some type of perfectionism or imposter syndrome or voice that's saying, what did you just say, or this isn't the right thing, whatever, but I've done a lot of rework and relearning, um to know and believe in my goodness, to know that I'm a good person, and to know that I'm actively trying to do like what's good for me and what's good for the people around me and the world around me and the community around me. And so I therefore don't doubt anything that I say or anything that I do. Um, I don't know if it's like the best. I still would love to be a little Beyonce singer. This is why I'm still in therapy, and I still have to karaoke on stage before I can graduate from therapy. I don't have the confidence to do that yet, but I'm doing the work to build it. Baby steps. I'm talking about this with strangers, so that's something. I don't do that. I'm a Scorpio. I like to keep my secrets close to my chest. Not my secrets, but I like to keep my vulnerabilities close. But yeah, I don't think that I'm right all the time. I don't care about being right all the time. I care about being honest. I care about being kind, and I care about helping. I took that away from AA, if anything, being of service, right? Like, if you're struggling and you're spiraling into your own self-deprecation, be of service, go out. And so I don't source out a lot for stuff. I try to build my own internal world up, but I do source out the result of me building up my own internal world. So that is what drives my confidence in me. But I call that faith, just faith in my goodness. And I'm not, again, like, I'm not always right. I have, I'm a Scorpio. I'm not a zodiac kind of queen, but I I've learned to set boundaries, and I'm well versed with words, and so I'm succinct, and I know how to set a boundary very directly, and that can hurt people's feelings, and I can own that and apologize for that too, because that's never what I'm trying to do, right? So um, faith in my goodness is what has helped me build the self assurance in my capabilities, and then expand and grow my self esteem. But
Yeah, I love
it started there, like, and that started with building or rebuilding the relationship that I have up here and the relationship that I have with me, because I don't think we learn that, like, I mean, we're told we're our own worst enemy or our own best friend, but we don't really know what that means, I think, until you get to a certain point in life, or that certain level in the game that is life, where you realize, like, oh, I am with me all the time and no one else. And this is what's driving me absolutely bonkers. Like, it's all of this, and this isn't even real. Like, say like 2% of what happens in here actually probably happens out here. Um, or even like 2% of what is capable of happening. But that was a big game changer, and helped uprooting the negative core beliefs and those limiting beliefs, to plant new ones, to create new moments that provided evidence of my goodness. So I wasn't focused on some shit that happened 30 years ago, that was irrelevant to today. Like, but yeah, that one time I stepped on that guy's toe. So that means I'm a piece of shit. No. Like, you've since apologized. That was an accident. You fell. You were pushed. Actually, you were gaslit to believe that whatever, like, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers. Does that answer the question a little bit? A very long-winded way of saying that's what confidence is for
Yeah.
me.
No, and I can relate on a lot of what you just said surrounding confidence and figuring it out, and kind of how that changes a little bit as we go through life. And I think it shows how those kind of relate too with what you're saying. It wasn't, you had said that you don't always have to be right, and I
Mm,
think it takes a more confident person to be okay with not always being right, because you're confident in yourself, the way you're approaching things, and you know there's probably going to be room to grow, and there's room to learn, and that doesn't mean like you're asserting your thought, and that's the only thought that matters, and that's the only thought that's right. And just being able to go into something, I think, shows more confidence in saying like, yeah, this is my perspective or my point of view or my experience, but I'm willing to listen to yours as well, and hear that side of it. And I think that takes a lot of confidence, because maybe it goes against something you believe. Maybe it goes against something that you've thought your whole life, or that you've been convinced of. And then this person is sitting in front of you telling you a different experience, and you can actually sit there and listen to it and take it in and value it. I think that shows like confidence right there, being able to do that. So I love that you said that you don't always have to be right. And then, the other one of the other parts I really liked is you briefly said how you were raised and how that impacted confidence and self-esteem. And I think that's a really good point to like think about, where we can learn where some of that comes from for us, because our experience.
some of it. It's where all of
Right.
it comes from.
Right. Well,
We
our
are kidding
experience.
ourselves. You're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself if you think you ever grow up, right? Like, my grandmother, God bless her heart now. She's 93. I look at her and I'd have no idea what she was like as a baby, but I know she is probably still her little 9-year-old self in that little withered 93-year-old body. We all, without a doubt, are our little inner children just bopping around this world, healed or not healed, but and in different like chapters, right? Sometimes we're that 3 or 4-year-old who didn't get the love or the coddling that they needed. Sometimes we're the prepubescent teen, like it. But there are things that happen along all of our lifespans that mark us. Whether we choose to admit it or not, whether we see it or not, whether or not we want to own it, what doesn't matter. It happens, because that's just the nature of development. But things happen, and they do inform so much of who you are, how you navigate the world, how you prioritize things, the lens that you choose to wear in life and see things through, right? The language that you use, the food that you eat. It just informs everything. Um, so all of that to say, most of us aren't brought up to prioritize developing the relationship with us internally, and recognizing that there's an internal world that is your whole journey, and that will inform all of the external world and that experience that you'll have. So if you can be a friend to you and support yourself and be kind and gentle and open to yourself when it's the hardest, you'll be good.
Yeah.
Then
And
you can
and
do that for other people all day, right? It bleeds out into the world.
yep.
And so, but we don't learn. That is never will you hear that till you read 18,000 books and you're sober 12 years. You watch it, whatever. Like, it's not fed to you in a very direct way. And then what you're taught to do is listen to whatever your parents tell you to do, And then what you end up doing also is repeating what your parents do, probably, and are telling you not to do, right? My dad, to cope with his feelings, repressed, suppressed, and drank. And even though he told me don't do it, or no, he never did. He denied he was an alcoholic. But even though, because I abhorred him, told myself I would never be an alcoholic. I'm never going to be like him or anyone else in my family because they were all alcoholics. What did I do when I ran out of other options to negatively cope with my feelings or to self destruct? Or to just survive, because that's what I saw and that's what I learned. I became an alcoholic like everybody else. It wasn't until I obviously got in therapy and was told, like, these things that you were told about you, that you aren't good enough, that you're an obligation, that you're a piece of shit, that whatever, all these things that you were told aren't true. And the people who told you these things, not only were they lying to you, not only does that make them liars, but they were also uh, they were traumatized and unhealed and wounded and spreading that, and they happen to also be your parents or your, whomever else, grandparents, you name it. And so that was like, oh, okay. So these things that I'm hearing in here, these thoughts, these facts, these voices, whatever, they're not facts. These feelings aren't facts, and they're not true. I can change my truth. I am a good person. That can be true. Okay. And then you go about life and then you start seeing the things that you do and you're like, oh wow, I really am a good person. And then you're like, I've been lied to I've been bamboozled. Right. But I had to actively rework the language I use. That's also why I pay attention to it so closely, because my father was very self-destructive. Obviously, he was an alcoholic and drank himself to death, but he was very punitive towards himself. When he was a bowler. I'd watch him on Tuesday nights and he'd go and I'd watch him set and then go arm back, go down the lane and throw the ball and just like it fuck up. And then he'd come back kicking and cursing himself and be like, oh, fucking Elliot. Oh, such an idiot, and he'd be so hard on himself. That's the same language I ended up using with myself inadvertently. It's not like I was like, I'm going to copy my dad. It was just, I got to be that hostile and abusive towards myself. Like, I'm fucking like, you're not gonna get your shit together, And it's also the same type of language he used with me when he was engaging with me, or trying to communicate with me through emotional moments. Just He had his reasons, but so all of that to say, how we are brought up kind of informs like your ability to feel a little confident as you get older. Like, no, it's the foundation for which or not, and there were days back in the day before I therapized it out where I was resentful. You're just like, fuck, who could I have been? I could have been somebody. If only I had parents who had confidence and, did the work and wanted to heal and whatever, and were able to pass that on and show me the way, who would I be? But where does that get you? Nowhere, absolutely nowhere. I have gotten to a space now in life where I appreciate every little nook and cranny of what I've been through, even the worst moments, because of who who it's forged me into being. This confidence that people see, it's nice that they see it, but that is not what I'm experiencing. It's nice that, and I think other people can relate. I'm sure you can too. I don't know if people are like, oh, you're so confident. And you're like, on the inside, I'm writhing, There's parts of me that are dying and withering like a plant that's just been overwatered. But again, you just come back to knowing how good you are,
Yeah. And there's so much good in that, and so much I can relate to, again, with just the experience of like feeling that on the inside, and the experience of like just telling that myself that, in my head, or convincing myself of all these things that could happen when it doesn't. It's not it's not there. So then it's about, like that relationship with yourself, like you talked about, you know, going through those things and to kind of reconnect, reframe, rethink about the way you approach that stuff. And that
Mhm.
was a huge part of it for me because I don't remember ever feeling confident growing up. I remember like my self-esteem, I think was pretty good. Like I felt like a good person, but I never felt like I could do stuff. I never felt like
Yeah.
I was, you know, I could get anything done. I would always look at other people and be like, oh man, you know, I wish I was able to do that. And that's kind of why I fell in love with drugs because then when I started drinking and doing drugs, I didn't have those thoughts anymore. I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go do whatever and not even think about it because I don't care
Yeah.
in this moment. And then you know, getting clean, that's what really started to build some real confidence like in me. I felt like I was yeah, I kind of had talked, you know, we talked beforehand. I kind of told you like I was confident while I was getting high, just in the sense of like I was going to get high. It didn't
Right.
matter what it was going to take. It didn't matter, you know, who I was going to have to hurt or, you know, who I was going to have to manipulate or lie to or, you know, the boundaries I was going to have to cross. Um, so then my self-esteem was really low because I wasn't a good person during all that. I was like, you know, hurting people and, you know, and
Right.
not even caring and and doing all
Well, yeah,
that.
that's what happens in that stage, right? You
Mhm.
believe that you are a piece of shit, so you do things that reinforce the
Yep.
fact that you are a piece of shit, or you create that. But you weren't, and you still aren't. You're just doing things, you're acting out. You don't know how to manage it. But yeah, it's that
Yeah.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
And it's that cycle, especially in addiction, right? Like,
Oh,
you
hell
know,
yeah.
I feel like a piece of shit, so I'm gonna drink more. Oh, I'm drinking more, so I feel like that piece of shit, so I got to drink
Right,
more to get rid of it. And it's
right.
just that cycle that keeps going. But you know, going back to what
Well,
you
where
said
did
about,
you why
you know,
why and why didn't you have self-esteem when you were coming up? Like what where did it start for you? For me, I know my parents were divorced, right? And my dad was an abusive alcoholic. So it came from there. Like what's your
yeah.
origin story?
Yeah, you know, I don't know
Have you,
where that lack of confidence was because you know my parents were together, still together. Neither one of them like drank or smoked or anything like that. So I don't exactly know. They were very loving and supportive of me and my brother. You know, if we wanted to try something or do something, we could go do it. We could go try it. Um, so I don't know exactly like why that was built inside of me and why I felt that so strongly. Because
are
I
you the
don't
younger
I
brother or
just
the older
always
brother?
remember thinking, what's that?
Is your brother older or younger than
Oh,
you?
older. I got yeah. He's about a year and a half older than me. And but I remember always looking to like him. Like I copied him and everything I did. I you know I made
Yeah,
him hate
yeah,
shit because I would do it with an addict
yeah.
behavior and
Right,
obsession. So then he would hate it because I'd become obsessed with it.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
but you know and so I don't know exactly like why
Interesting.
that was so strong in me, but I remember
Mm.
that's just how I always felt. Like I remember always having a lack of confidence, a lack of believing in myself, and just always doubted that throughout my whole life. No, and then it didn't matter what like my accomplishments were, or you know, even in soccer, I always doubted myself, even though I was proven time and time again that I was one of the better players on the team, or you know, I got a scholarship to go play in college or whatever it was, I still
Yeah.
always doubted whether I deserved to be there. And that's why, you know, I love the confidence that drugs gave me, that false sense of confidence. It wasn't real confidence because it was
Mm.
gone right when I was coming
Right,
down.
right, 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 right.
Um, but that was part of the reason why I really, really love that feeling because it killed something that felt so true to me, like that I could never accomplish anything, and it just took that away. It gave me all the confidence in the world. Again, that false sense. But getting clean and then you know re-looking at that relationship with myself, that's where I started to actually build real confidence because then I was able to do stuff and not be so hard on myself and not be so mean to myself with that negative self-talk. You know, you were talking about like
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
I could relate so much to that example of bullying. I'm not a bowler, but just that idea of that one little mess up and you're like, oh, you're a fucking idiot. You know, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah.
You're worthless, whatever. And that
Yep.
self-talk and getting rid of that and just being like, all right, hey, you messed up a little bit. Now it's time to either try it again, or you messed up, but you're trying. You're doing
Right.
your best. You're doing that.
Right.
So then that started helping like my actually gaining some confidence. And then I think with that and doing the right thing, that's where the self-esteem and self-worth started building again, because I wasn't, doing all these negative behaviors and just in that cycle of like, oh, I'm gonna fuck you over, I'm gonna fuck you
Yeah,
over,
yeah.
I'm gonna do what I need to get.
That's interesting. Did you ever have like a specific like passion in life? You know, there's always, I don't know about where you grew up, but where I grew up there were kids who were like, I'm the soccer kid, I'm the basketball kid, I'm the theater kid, you know, and I was surrounded by it seemed like everybody knew what they loved to do. I'm the kid who like I could do a lot of different things and a little bit of everything kind of well, but like I've never been the type to have a like I'm this, you know, like I didn't even know what I was going to study when I went to college. But did you have like a thing? Did you grow up with a thing?
Not really, especially not a career thing. Like I thought
Yeah,
I wanted to
yeah,
be a vet because I loved animals. When I didn't start playing soccer until I was 11, and right away I fell in love and became passionate about that. And then that it was really that same relationship as it was with soccer, kind of with drugs. Is when I got
yeah.
into
Mm,
drugs, I loved them. I was
right,
passionate about them, and it was, obviously those are two different things on the spectrum
right.
of, positive and negative
Just a
influences.
little.
But I like those were the two things in my life that I could really remember just ever like having and feeling good. And I felt good when I
Why'd
was
you
playing.
stop playing soccer?
I stopped playing in college. So I got there, I dropped out after I started using heroin. Actually went back. My coach gave me another chance. Left again because I got the hard drugs got worse again, and then I went back one more time to a different small college. And that's actually where I met my wife. But I was there for a brief
God bless
stint.
that.
Yeah, I was there for a brief stint because that's when like hit my true rock bottom was during that. But I went there, played soccer one more time, um, and I might kick it around, but I took over coaching a lot.
Mm,
Fell in love with that aspect of it, but it's just something that like I didn't feel like I always needed to be playing anymore. I didn't have that competitive mindset either anymore once I got clean of that because I felt like there was more to my life than soccer. And
yeah,
when I was in it, when I
yeah,
was working and driving to be better, I felt like that was the only thing I had in my life. Now I can see like there's so much more to me than just like playing soccer.
yeah, 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 yeah. You probably, yeah, and you might not have, who knows how long it would have taken you to have that expanded perspective on your life
Yeah, and
had
and
you
that's where
you
like I think that's going through these things that we go through, whether they're negative or not. Like I'm, I'm glad I went through that. Like I don't
yeah,
regret. Maybe I don't like some of the things I did and some of the things that happened while I was in that moment, but I've learned so much, and I'm one of the lucky ones that made it out. Right? I mean, not
yeah,
everybody makes
totally,
it.
totally.
Right?
And it
And
sounds to me that like, and again, I don't say, well, you correct me if I'm wrong, and you could say, shut the heck up, you don't know what you're talking about. But as I'm listening to you, it sounds to me like the drug use and the choices that ensued after that, it was like a form of self-sabotage in a way because you didn't have the confidence in your abilities maybe to be a soccer player or whatever life you were trying to live that maybe you didn't know if you really wanted to live at that point. um yeah, that's, I don't know, that's like what my heart feels as I'm like
self
listening to your story.
Yeah. No, that I could write a book on on self-sabotage. But that's even come to play a little bit sometimes like after in recovery of like I never went back to using, but there was definitely like some behaviors or some thought process that was like, oh, I just need to fuck this all up. like
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't feel good about it. So, I mean, I don't consciously like say that in the moment, but I know what I'm about to do is going to cause a big problem.
Yeah.
or what I'm about to say is going to cause a big problem. And so that's something like I've constantly been working on throughout my life, and more conscious of after getting clean, because I can think about it clearly, and now I can see some of the habits, some of the thought processes. Like I can feel it coming sometimes. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
nope, nope, nope.
Not to do that thing.
You know what's gonna happen. So don't do it. But then that's where that confidence builds. Like those moments of self-sabotage are less, and there's more time in between. And they're
Yeah.
not so extreme.
Right.
So
Right. That part. Yeah.
yeah. And so it gives me that confidence. And then, again, it gives me that it builds up my self-esteem and self-worth, because I know, like, I'm still trying to get rid of some of these thoughts and behaviors that I survived off of. So sometimes
Yeah.
they're a little bit harder to let go, or that I lived with for so long. I'm still in that
Which
process
ones
of
are hard?
building
Which ones are
myself.
hard for you to let go?
I'd say that one is probably one of the biggest one. Guilt and shame is another one. Though, like some of those ones that definitely are more negative, I feel more comfortable in,
Yeah.
because I'm just so comfortable in misery, I guess, in my
Right.
addiction. Those are ones where it's almost unnatural for me to be in the life I have right now. It feels almost unnatural at times.
Yes.
Yeah, because I just was so comfortable in that, and I didn't have, a good view of myself, whether that was
Right.
externally, internally, whatever. I didn't have a positive view of myself, so I felt like what I have today was impossible, was not for me, was not something I deserved. So, that's some of those things that are a little harder to let go, just because things are good, which is a really weird
Yeah.
concept.
He said it's harder to let go because things are good.
Yep.
That is like, okay, folks, if you want to know what it feels like to heal, that in a nutshell, as that is what you experience every moment of the day. And it's, can you remain graceful and kind and soft and laugh while you're
Yeah.
experiencing that every moment of the day? Because you're like, shit, this life, like, would not, like, it should not exist. I should not exist. I shouldn't be here in this space with these things, with these people, but it is here and it's peaceful. What? And then the panic ensues, you're like, where's that bill that I didn't pay? Or like, there's something
Yeah.
that's going to happen. Like, oh, that pipe is going to burst or something, you
But
know?
that's an example of self-sabotage right there. There's been
Yeah,
times where I
right.
was like, I'm not gonna pay this bill for whatever reason. Like I'm gonna go spend my money on something else. And then like I know it's gonna come up in a month and shit's gonna suck. Something's gonna hit the fan. And it's like, why didn't I just do that? It made way more sense just to do it in that moment. But I was like, there was something going on in that moment that I was just like, you know what? Screw it.
Yeah,
I know what's gonna come in a month. I'll deal with it
right.
then.
Right. And the more moments you can string together of you doing the hard things now, the less misery you prevent for yourself later, the less suffering you create for yourself and everyone else around you later. Um, and the more confidence you build, right? And I don't know why I have such an aversion to that word confidence, because I don't know if it's like the self-help industry that's like oversold it, or like, I don't know, but it does to me feel like something that can be people aspire to buy, like, how do
Yeah.
I teach you how to be confident? And it's like,
Well, that's why, like, what you said in the beginning really stood out to me. Like, just kind of going back to that, because I completely understand that. It's like when I think of the word confidence, I think of like this really perfectly lit video of this guy, like, yeah, you want to be like me? Let's go. Like, but that's not, to me, that's not what it is. I can
right,
be confident, but I don't have to be like intense in your face, right? Where
right,
I'm just confident I'm doing my best and I'm a good person and I'm going to keep trying.
right.
Um, but that confidence also, like, it takes away from me judging people so much. It takes away from me, comparing so much. It starts taking away some of those other things just because I'm confident. Yeah, like I know, like I'm not gonna be everybody's cup of tea, right? Like people are not
Right?
gonna like the way I look, people are not gonna like the way I talk, people are not gonna like of what I've experienced or what I've done in my past. Um, but I'm confident in myself. I don't like it doesn't need to be that like, oh, if you want to, lead 1,000 and, like just
Leave
that's it.
yourself.
Yeah.
Leave yourself. I'm like, whoa, bro, that is not the way
Yeah.
to go. That
But,
is
but
what?
I
Why are
think,
you mad? Why are
yeah.
you yelling?
To me, that's the distinction of confidence that helped me build it. Because I
Yeah.
didn't need to be loud and confident because I'm not a loud
Right.
person. And I thought confidence, you had to be like loud and center of attention and all this glamorous, beautiful, whatever stuff. But no, confidence to me is to be able to sit there and be okay with myself and
Right.
be.
And that's like, that's part of what worries me about the world in which we live, especially here, because that's what's sold is confident, right? Like being all of those things. Be the loud person in the room. Say what's on your mind no matter what. Like be shiny and pretty and all of these things. But and a fit in, like do whatever you got to take to fit in and own the room, like that to me isn't confidence. To me that is a compensation for a lack of confidence. And knowing who you are, feeling comfortable in the skin that you're in, um having an appreciation for how you impact the space around you and an awareness of it. And then I think the last piece we haven't touched on yet is not just like a confidence in you and a faith in you, but a faith in a little bit existential, like in the world around you, in this experience being for you, right? Like you're not the victim of circumstance or the victim of life. This is, I don't know, this we're all energy, just different vibrations, frequencies of all kind of the same stuff, And when you zoom out a little bit and look back on life, I promise you, if you don't see it now, you'll see it later, that everything that's unfolded and that unfolds in life is always for you, right? It might not make sense in the immediate moment, but at some point it falls into that category of like, oh, shit, if that didn't happen, then that wouldn't have, and that wouldn't have, and I wouldn't be here. And God bless, it's always that, like always to some varying degree. So knowing that you are good and having that confidence in you, but having that confidence in life being for you as well, and not against you, because that also makes a huge shift in how people experience the world and how they walk around spilling their shit out in the world, like I have dealing with a couple people. I'm dealing with some folks, one specifically at work who has adopted that victim mentality. And, I'm in the corporate space. I've been in this company now for 8.5 years, but I've been in the corporate space for 15, 20 years. I don't even know how old I am anymore. 15 years. Um, and this is the first time in my adult life I am dealing with some like third grade, can't handle my feelings stuff at work because somebody's just like adopted that mentality of the world's against me. And it's hard to operate with people like that because um, it's their lack of confidence, right? That closes the door to any real conversation.
Yeah.
I've had conversations, but it's not a two-way conversation. They don't hear you, and then if they do, they can't really apply what you're giving them. So like that. Well,
And I think that's a lack of confidence, right? Is to have a conversation.
yes.
A conversation is two ways, and if you can't like respect and take in what the other person is saying, like I feel like that's that overcompensation of like, no, but I'm right.
Right.
But I'm like this is the only way to do it. And I love what you said about the way we experience the world is because that's like something I talk about when I talk about my story is how I was in such a victim mentality of why me? Why
Mhm.
is this happening to me? Why does my life suck? Why am I, putting a needle in my arm, passing out in random places?
Mhm.
And now removed from that and looking at, okay, well, that didn't happen, that this wouldn't have happened, and then maybe I would
Right.
have graduated college, but where would my, where would my mindset have been at that if I kept that same mentality that I didn't go through some of the things I went through
Right.
to see life the way I see it now? Because I love the life I love the way I see life now much more than I did back then, and
Yes.
the
That
aspect of looking at things happening for you, even if they're bad, and 100% that can be hard as shit sometimes. And I'm not saying that's easy or whatever, but when you can take that step back and see like how moments happen to, this one closes or this one's tough because something else is going to open over here, or this hard moment's going to push you that way. And if you look at it that way, if if something here is pushing you that way and you turn and go that way, you're going to find something. But if something's pushing you and you're staying this way, trying to force yourself back over there, it's not going to happen. You're not going to
right.
feel good about where you're at or what you're doing. And it takes that work, right? It takes like that work on yourself. And I think that's what builds true confidence is not just working on one aspect of your life, but when you're working on everything and you're looking at different aspects and trying to understand it from a deeper level, that's where real confidence is going to show, and you're going to feel good about who you are and what you're doing, even if something's negative happening around you, or even if you're in a tough place, you just know it because you've been putting in the work to get there.
Exactly. And you know what makes confidence a little bit easier to access in hard times? I will tell you. It's forgiveness. Because in those moments, we know where you're like, why did I put that needle in my arm? I guarantee you that if you could have done better, different, you would have. Right? Like,
No,
and it never
no,
matters. It never
I
matters.
would have kept doing it.
No, but
No, I
if you
agree.
could
And
have, if you could have
yep,
stopped, you know what I mean? If
yep,
you had the
yep,
tools, you would have, right?
100%,
Like, if
100%.
you could have made, if you had the full spiritual tool belt that you have now, and could have made a different choice, you would have, but you couldn't, right? How can you continue to fault yourself for making choices that there was not really much more space to make any other different choice. And it doesn't really matter what you know. Again, like because I lived in this space of shame, and my brother, who I love, I feel like lives in a space of shame too. So my heart breaks. I've since come out of that shadow of shame a little bit, but I've lived that life of like, you freaking knew better. You had 18,000 examples of what happens when you make these kinds of choices over and over again, right? But like, yet here you are, sobbing with a bottle, alone, not knowing like how could you, how dare you, blah blah blah. I'm my father. I'm the worst parts of all the people that are the worst people in my in the story of my life, right? It's a hard place to be. It's a painful place to be. But what else did I know?
Yeah, and I
What
think
else
that's
did I
where,
know?
right.
Everybody else around me, they were doing the same thing. The people who taught me how to be by either telling me or by showing me, they were doing the same thing. Everybody I knew was punishing themselves, lying about their true feelings, carrying around a lot of pain and trauma and not unpacking it and just numbing it away. Everybody was doing that. So like ultimately, no matter what I knew cognitively, I'm smart. I graduated with a 4.67 GPA from high school. I was smart, right? But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how many books you read. That's not going to make the choice for you. What makes the choice for you is some spirit deep down within, I don't know. And until it's like a wild horse almost. And unless you learn kind of how to bridle it and work with it, it's out there making its own goddamn choices all the freaking time. And you pray and hope it stays in the fields and it doesn't get itself in trouble. Sometimes it does. That's when you kind of break it and tame it. You can corral it. But us addicts, our wild horse never gets tamed. You can never corral that thing. We're just out there, and you never know, if you're gonna find that horse breathing or not. Um, you just hope and pray.
Yep.
Um, Look at us now. We're breathing, we're kicking, we're tamed, we're good. We're not at the glue factory. We are alive and well.
My,
But
I love that analogy. Like, I think that's a great analogy of like just that bigger sense of more, and like understanding that there is that internal kind of like you're taming something or you're bringing it in. It's going to get away sometimes. It's going to be wild sometimes.
yeah,
And then that goes into the other part of what you're talking about where, yeah, I wouldn't, or if I had another choice or felt like I did, I probably wouldn't have done it. But that's where I think self-compassion
right.
is really important, in positive self-talk, because
Right.
if I continued to beat the shit out of myself for everything I did while I was using, I would be a miserable person. I wouldn't have
And
what
you
I
know
have
what that would
today.
mean? That would
Yep.
mean that you haven't forgiven yourself. So if you can forgive yourself, practice, to your point, self compassion and empathy, by the virtue of that, in the process of that, your language then becomes more supportive, right? Because you're not punishing yourself anymore. You've forgiven yourself and you're saying, no, that's okay. I don't need to keep beating you with my language. I can say next, and like keep trying. And oh, it wasn't so bad this time. You can change the tone of the language that you use with yourself. But it takes work because we're not necessarily automatically programmed to do that.
Yeah.
And
And I
as
yeah.
long as you've lived a certain way, it can
Mm,
take that long to adopt a new way of being, right? I think that's another thing that, if we're talking about confidence and adopting ways of life to build confidence, find confidence, to believe in yourself, like you can't buy it, right? You can't watch it through other people's videos on Instagram. Like you can read books, but like what, you have to live it. You have to like do the thing. And I think people forget that it's not just a one-time thing. You just read the one book and then you try and then, oh, well, it didn't work. So now I'm just going to be insecure the rest of my life. Like,
yeah.
no,
Yeah.
like this is something that you consistently have to do and build and expand on, because it's also not guaranteed, right? Confidence isn't like, oh, I'm here, I have it now, yay, forever. No, you would get into bigger and bigger arenas. The more you challenge yourself, the more you grow, the more you expand. The more you challenge yourself, the more you're going to be trying things that are new. So, confidence, I think we were talking about earlier, is like having this openness to
Mhm.
to doing things right and wrong, and just to do things. But
Yeah.
to constantly, consistently do them, because you can't, it's not a one and done.
And that's the most important thing about it, right? And you can't buy it. You can't do one thing. At least in my experience, you can't do one thing and just feel confident in every aspect of life for
Yeah.
the rest of your life. It's a
Right.
flowing thing where you have to work on it constantly, and I have to work on it in different ways, and I have to
Yep.
be able to adapt that as I grow and change as a person. Because if I try to do what I did to make me confident in my first year recovery, I wouldn't have the growth. I've had to adapt that and change that. Like you
Yep.
said, you go into bigger arenas or new opportunities open up,
Mhm.
or life starts to evolve. You end up in a relationship, or you get a new job, or
Good.
just yeah,
Like,
whatever
things
it is.
happen.
Like everything, and it's such a growing process. Like I think it's good to get advice, to get tips from other people, but I think until you figure out how to apply that for yourself on a consistent level, like you said, consistent, constantly,
Right.
then you might get those false senses of it. And, that's what drugs and alcohol had gave me. It gave me this false sense
Right.
of it, but that wasn't real and it wasn't maintainable because I
Right.
couldn't function on drugs and alcohol all the time or
Right.
live a productive, good life. And so it was that falseness of it where I think when you try to buy it or you try to find a quick way to it, right? Like you said, it takes
Right.
time. It takes a lot of time.
It
If you
does.
try to find that shortcut, it's probably not going to be sustainable.
And you'll be so disappointed. Like it might
Yep.
work short term, but for the long term, it's not. But to your point, it's not sustainable, and that is what concerns me for the mass majority of folks that I know are out there. Is that I think we are in a time where we are requiring a lot of change and a lot of healing and a lot of growing and a lot of educating and expanding. Um, and we're used to like ordering things on Amazon and getting it overnight or getting it in the next 45 minutes, and that is not how these things happen. And uh it takes time and it takes actual work and it takes being uncomfortable and it takes accepting the fact that it's all going to be uncomfortable and not allowing the negative component that can be trump all of the positive outcomes of doing that stuff. um so I'm saying all of that to just caution people to, as you're cultivating this relationship with yourself and really trying to change how you hear the voices in your head and change how you speak with yourself and change what you say out loud when you look at yourself in the mirror and change how you speak to your kid when you're at the end of your rope and they've just said that thing that makes you want to slap them real quick on the back of the head, or the change how you want to respond to that person who comes at you left in the middle of a meeting in front of your boss because they just want to be heard. When you're doing this and it's hard and you want to give up, don't, because it's hard and it takes time and it's going to stretch you, and that's why it hurts. Growing confidence, building confidence um isn't easy because
Yeah.
it
I mean,
involves, I think, being completely self-aware and vulnerable and honest and okay with being exposed and feeling exposed and not having any judgment around that. It takes a while to get to that point where you can like let go of that judgment because the ego wants to kick in and be like, but what about what they think and this, and but none of that matters.
yeah. No, I love the way you just put all that, and I think that's a kind of a really good place to kind of bring it home, because I love the analogy again that you used of Amazon, right? We want to order, we want to get something, we get it right
How
away.
it is working on my
Well,
balcony and doing my
right,
projects. I'm like, you can come in 30 minutes, but
right.
no, that's not life.
That's not this stuff. That's not, there's no quickness to it. Because if there was, for one, I would have done it a long time ago. And I probably would be in a different spot than I am now because I did it a long time ago. It's that
Okay.
constant bit of work that you have to put in and you have to keep trying and you have to be open and honest and vulnerable and, everything you just said. And you have to be okay with messing up. Like that's where you need to also have those practices of self-compassion and positive self-talk because life doesn't go the way you want it. That's what it is. That's life. And if you give up every time it changes or it diverts into a different direction, you're gonna be giving up every day.
Right.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. If you want to build true confidence, if you want to have that maintain and sustainability of self-esteem and confidence, I'm sorry, but you can't buy it for $9.99. Like
No,
you have
no.
to work
And you can't
every day.
you can't do it. You cannot do it without radically loving yourself, right?
No, no, you have to. And I love that. And that's one thing that drew me to you is I saw that messaging, the radical self-love. Um, because I think that's what it really takes.
Yeah.
Especially just coming from, a drug addict who's done different things in life I'm not proud of and I'm not happy
Right.
about. Without that self-love, without that radical self-love, I probably would be either dead or,
Mhm.
still in that lifestyle.
Right.
And it's not easy to do that, but that's where when you work on that and that confidence and that self-worth, all those things tie in together to where you can feel good about your life. And then hopefully you can bring and be that example of happiness and positivity that we don't see too often.
And we just need more of it. That's all we need. We can do it. We got it.
Exactly. Exactly. So thank you again,
Of
Chris, so
course.
much for joining me for doing this. Hopefully, I will get you back on again
Anytime,
to
my friend,
do
anytime.
some
It's a
more.
blast.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again so much for taking the time. It's always a fun conversation with you.
Same. I enjoy it. Thank you for having me. It's been a
Of
pleasure.
course. Yeah. And so this has been Illuminate Navigate Radio. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.